Hello, welcome back to the Starcatcher podcast. I'm your host, Chase Thompson, and today we have a special guest by the name of Michael Burke. Michael was a student here at Stephens in the theater program back in the day, so he talks about that. He talks about being in the MFA program, which we both went through together. That's Stephens College's MFA in television and screenwriting, and so we talk about our experiences with that. He gives great advice for people in theater and beyond that want to get prepared for what's waiting once they graduate, and how networking really does make a difference, and how to do that in some ways that are creative. So I want you to enjoy this, and one of the things we head towards is what's it going to be like when COVID's over and we go back and see some shows. What is that going to be like? How good is that going to feel? Stay tuned, we'll find out. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Burke. Another thing, too, I have on my list to talk to you about is some of the students here may or may not know that Stephens has a Master of Fine Arts in television and screenwriting. Yes. It's a low residency program, which means you do most of it online, but 10 days every semester you meet out in the Jim Henson studio. Yes, Jim Henson studio, Kermit the Frog here. In the studio out there that used to be the Charlie Chaplin studio that he built. And so we have a shared experience in that we both went through this program. And I just didn't, if you wanted to share any memories, just one of mine was, I remember we were there on when I was in the studio area in the lot, and like a Rolls Royce rolls up and like Lady Gaga gets out and everyone's like, oh my God. And then there was another guy who was carrying a case, and it had Elmo's arm sticking out of it. I was like, what's going on? And like, oh, that's the guy who's like voice of Elmo. Like he leaves the arm out on purpose to get attention. It was like really funny. It was a great experience. It was 2 intense years, and like going back to be a student, at Stephens, we both were non-traditional, in the way we handled it. How did that work for you? What was your impression?
It tried to wreck me, I'll tell you.
It was intense.
Because those of you that are writers, and they were great about it for me, I was looking for a challenge, just to challenge myself in my own creativity that's in my head and get it and do that. But I think they do a great job. And everybody I talked to was, just get in the chair, just sit down and do it. And trying to really live up to that and trying to meet the deadlines. It'd been a long time since I'd been a student.
Wow.
But it's a really well-conceived program. And many of you, I think my guess is that when you first came to Stephens, you get that vibe like this is college, these brick buildings with the ivy growing on them. And you're just like, oh yes, this is a college. It just feels like a college. And the same way with the MFA, the way it's set up in LA, when you go to the Henson studio, it is an old school Hollywood small studio that you were there and you're just like, I'm in the business. I'm here. And it's really motivating. It's really exciting. And they've got great people involved. My favorite story was I'm sitting there in my living room, 1 second to midnight. I just turned in some assignment and I'm just like, I don't know, maybe I was drinking or having a beer or something. And I'm just watching, I just turned on the television and this movie trailer comes up. And I'm watching it, and okay, well, and I watched all of a sudden how they sort of say the last thing is like the shot of the credits of the movie, if you're paying attention. And I look, and the person that wrote the movie was the person I had just sent my homework to. So I was like, okay, I guess this is
getting their notes. Oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah, I had several of those moments where I'd be awe of the people that I was getting feedback from. And then they're good. They're great teachers. I jokingly say the stuff that I wrote before that program might as well have been in crayon. Because when I got through that, I realized how much there is and how much the process needs to be instilled in you by professionals. And I was very proud of that, completing that program and seeing you do it as well. Emma just asked us, do you have any mentors? Yes. Ken Lezebnik was a great mentor for me. his brother did the Prince of Egypt and the Milan script for Disney, and he brought him in, and we like dissected Milan and how he wrote that with a team of people at Disney. That was eye-opening. And then Rosanne as well. Rosanne Welch is the director of the program, and she shared a ton of information. I had no idea women's role in the history of Hollywood and how women ran Hollywood for a long time. And no one knows that. It was just the World War II ended, people came back and just kind of like, oh, thanks for holding these positions for us, and then scooped it up, kind of is what it feels like. So she resurrected a bunch of these women, and we all got to discuss. And I kind of landed on this woman named Lois Weber and started cracking her code. And I wrote an essay on it, and she got our work published, and it was a huge feather in my hat, and it's helping rewrite these people's names in history, and she's doing that. So the history component was one that surprised me. I didn't know that I would get a mentorship like that, Emma. And well, so it really the same thing too.
Well, what you find out, and as we're all becoming more aware of in our world is, and what they really make sure you understand is that, you got to be careful about who writes the history, right? And we would literally read these books. You'd go read this one, and then this other dude would write this book, and he would just leave these people out. He would just ignore the fact that all these women were involved. And so it's making a lot of headway in that. I'm listening to a podcast right now. My former boss in Seattle is doing on the history of musical theater, and really that early theater life, that early theater world, particularly musical theater film, they weren't seen as legitimate professions, and so it was a place for women, immigrants, people that were back in the day, we've discriminated all the time about different immigrant classes that have come in, whether it was the Irish, whatever. And so what did they do? They went to these places that were seen as illegitimate because they would get hired, and they literally made these industries just like these women were so big in making the film industry come to life. And it wasn't until the money showed up, particularly with sound, when it was like, oh, little lady, you couldn't possibly understand this technology.
She's like, I'm making $5,000 a week. What are you talking about? And they were it was another thing that was so surprising. So I'm very thankful for that mentorship. And there's many more. Oh my God. John Vandergriff was one of was a gem. Just his feedback. I became a better teacher because of the way he gave feedback. And that was my favorite thing. Anyone that's in education, and you might have had this experience too, Mike, was, having all these different mentors for your classes. You get to see how they give feedback, how they make you a better writer, and you can just pick and choose as a teacher what you want to take back and implement into your own classes. Like I evolved a lot in that process.
Well, and that's my belief system for everyone that I work with.